On July 4th, 2025, President Donald Trump signed the One Big Beautiful Bill Act into law, bringing a major change to tipping culture in the U.S. A key highlight is the No Tax on Tips Act, which allows eligible tipped workers such as servers, bartenders, hairstylists, delivery drivers to deduct up to $25,000 in tips from their federal taxable income and up to $12,500 in overtime pay, or $25,000 for joint filers. This relief applies for the 2025-2028 tax years, phasing out for individuals earning above $150,000, couples $300,000. Why it matters. Roughly 4 million U.S. workers rely on tips as a critical income source. Estimated average tax savings, $1,800 for tipped workers, $1,400 to $1,750 for overtime earners. Federal revenue loss projected $121 billion over 2026-2029. Early reactions. Supporters, e.g. service unions, some labor advocates herald it as financial relief for service workers. Critics argue it skews benefits to higher-income tipped workers, doesn't address systemic low wages, and worsens deficits. The Real Voices: How Americans Feel About Tipping. Tipping in America has become more than just a gesture of appreciation. It's become a social expectation, sometimes even a source of frustration, confusion, or guilt. As tipping screens appear at coffee shops, food trucks, and self-checkout kiosks, more Americans are asking, am I tipping too much or not enough? From customers' perspective, Reddit threads and social media posts often highlight how pressured people feel. I just bought a $4 croissant and got asked to tip 25%. For what? No table service, no extra anything. U/bring back common. I'm tipping baristas, delivery guys, Uber drivers, grocery baggers, everyone. Meanwhile, my salary hasn't gone up in 3 years. Comment on X, formerly Twitter. It used to be 10% if the service was okay, 15% for good, and 20% for excellent. Now 20% is the starting point, and you feel cheap if you choose 15%. Facebook post from San Diego mom of two. A 2024 Pew Research study found 72% of Americans say tipping expectations are out of control. 41% admit they have tipped out of guilt. 1 in 5 say they have avoided businesses because of tipping screens or pressure. From workers' perspective, while some customers feel overwhelmed, many workers see tips as a lifeline, especially with stagnant minimum wages. My hourly wage is $2.13. If I don't get tips, I literally don't make rent. Waitress in Texas, Reddit AMA. The worst part is when people stiff you, like you carried 3 grocery bags up their stairs in the rain and they just say thanks. Instacart worker, X, Twitter. I'm grateful for every dollar, but it's humiliating when people tip 10 cents just to make a point. Barista in Portland. Many gig workers, like DoorDash drivers or Uber Eats couriers, report that tips often make up 50 to 70% of their income. Without them, it's almost not worth taking the job. Emotional toll. Workers talk about having to smile through pain just to receive a few bucks. Some customers feel awkward declining to tip for services they used to view as non-tippable. Others question why corporations get away with underpaying, while customers are expected to bridge the gap. Tipping has become a tool that corporations use to offload the responsibility of fair pay onto us. X post with 38,000 likes. This emotional complexity fuels both resentment and compassion, making tipping in 2025 not just an economic act, but a moral dilemma. A brief history of tipping in the United States. Tipping didn't start in America, it was imported. In fact, the earliest roots of tipping in the U.S. date back to the 1850s, when wealthy Americans returning from Europe brought the idea back from aristocratic customs in England. A European invention, Americanized. In Europe, tips were originally given by the upper class to servants as a bonus for exceptional service. When the practice came to the U.S., it clashed with democratic ideals, and many Americans initially rejected it. Tipping is inconsistent with American equality and republicanism. Anti-Tipping Society of America, 1904. Yet tipping took hold, not as a mark of appreciation, but as a way for employers to avoid paying full wages. Post-Civil War exploitation. After the Civil War, tipping became widespread in industries that employed newly freed black workers, particularly in railways and hospitality. Employers paid almost nothing and told customers to tip instead. Many railroad porters and hotel workers were paid entirely in tips. This was not a bonus, it was their paycheck. Historian Saru Jayaraman, author of Forked. This practice laid the groundwork for what we see today. Workers legally paid below minimum wage, relying on tips to survive. The 1938 Fair Labor Standards Act, FLSA. This law established the U.S. federal minimum wage, but with a loophole. Tipped workers could be paid as little as $2.13 per hour, a figure that still applies in many states today, so long as tips bring them to the standard minimum. That $2.13 number hasn't changed in over 30 years, not even for inflation. Restaurant Opportunity Center United, ROC. Tipping becomes the norm. By the mid-20th century, tipping was firmly entrenched in restaurants, hair salons, taxis, hotels, bellhops, bars. In the 2000s to 2020s, tipping culture exploded into coffee shops, fast food, food trucks, digital platforms, gig economy apps, Uber, Lyft, Instacart. Thanks to technology, customers are now prompted to tip on iPads and apps, often with default buttons starting at 18% or 20%, even for self-service. Timeline summary. 1850s. Prophylactic Americans import tipping from Europe, 1870s to 1900s. Used to avoid fair wages for freed slaves. 1938. Mamasi establishes minimum wage plus tipped loophole. 1966. Tipped minimum wage formalized in federal law. 1980s to 2020, tipping expands across U.S. economy. 2025s of law provides tax relief for tips. Tipping in America is not just about generosity, it's tied to race, class, and labor rights. It's a system shaped over centuries by social tension, economic necessity, and now digital pressure. Social impact and inequality of tipping culture. While tipping may seem like a simple act of generosity, its effects on American society are anything but simple. Over time, tipping has come to reinforce social inequalities, create hidden labor stress, and divide people across lines of class, race, and gender. A system built on unstable wages. At the heart of the tipping economy is this reality. Workers are not paid a livable wage by their employer. They depend on the kindness of strangers. This structure creates unstable income. Workers can't predict how much they'll earn each day. Emotional labor. Employees must smile, flirt, tolerate rudeness, or even harassment to secure tips. Increased burnout. Psychological exhaustion from pretending to be cheerful for money. You're not just doing your job, you're performing gratitude for money you haven't even earned yet. Anonymous bartender, Reddit. A single customer's mood determines if I eat well or skip dinner. DoorDash driver, YouTube comment. Gender and sexual harassment. According to data from the Restaurant Opportunity Centers United, over 66% of female servers report being sexually harassed on the job. Many feel they cannot reject inappropriate behavior because they risk losing tips. I've had men touch my back or comment on my body. I can't say anything, or my tip goes from 20% to zero. Server in Florida. Tipping culture, especially in restaurants and bars, often forces women to accept poor behavior in silence, a silent trade-off between dignity and income. Racial inequality. Black and Latino workers in tipped industries are tipped less than white workers on average. More likely to work in lower-end restaurants or service gigs where tips are small and inconsistent, face implicit bias from customers in how they're treated or compensated. I smile the same as my white coworkers, but I regularly make $30 and $40 less per shift. Black waitress in Georgia, Reddit thread. A 2022 study from Cornell University showed that white customers tip white servers 20% more often than black servers. BIPOC workers report more no-tip transactions, even when service was rated good. Divide between workers. Even within the workforce, tipping can divide workers. Servers often earn more than kitchen staff, though both contribute to the experience. Gig workers like Uber drivers compete over tip-boosted algorithms, leading to burnout and resentment. Some jobs like cashiers or stockers never receive tips at all, even while making similarly low wages. My buddy is a barista and gets $80 a day in tips. I work grocery and get $0. Our base pay is the same. Facebook post, Minnesota. This creates a system where two workers doing equally valuable labor may earn vastly different incomes purely based on customer mood or social norms, social shame, and peer pressure. Customers are also impacted. Tipping is no longer a free choice. It's a moral dilemma, sometimes a public performance. Global comparison. Why the U.S. clings to tipping. Tipping is not a universal norm. In fact, the U.S. is an outlier, both in the scale and expectation of tipping. To understand why America holds on to this system, it's helpful to compare it with other countries. How other countries handle tipping. Let's take a look at how tipping is handled around the world and how it compares to the United States. In Japan, tipping is not expected, and in many cases, it's actually refused. The minimum wage there covers the cost of living, so tipping is seen as rude or unnecessary. Great service is simply part of the job. South Korea is similar. Tipping is rare outside of tourist-heavy areas. Again, workers earn a living wage, so there's no need to tip at restaurants or in taxis. In France, a tip of 5 to 10% is considered optional. Most of the time, the service charge is already included in the bill, and wages are sufficient for workers to live comfortably. Germany expects a small tip, usually between 5 to 10%. It's polite, but not strictly required. The key point is that the minimum wage is enough to live on, so tips are just a nice gesture. In the United Kingdom, tipping is often included in the bill, usually around 10 to 12.5%. Wages in the UK are generally higher, so tipping is seen more as a bonus, not a necessity. Australia takes a different approach. Tipping is not expected at all. It's usually reserved for exceptional service only. That's because servers and hospitality staff earn full wages that are enough to live on. Now, let's talk about the United States. Here, tipping is expected, ranging from 15 to 25%, especially in restaurants. But the biggest difference? The minimum wage does not cover basic living costs for many service workers. That means tipping isn't just polite, it's essential. For many workers, tips are literally built into their survival income. So while tipping is a bonus or even unnecessary in much of the world, in the US, it's a lifeline. I worked in Tokyo for 2 years. People were shocked when I tried to tip. They returned the money and said, "It's our job to give good service." Former American expat, Reddit. In most countries, service workers earn living wages, and tipping is truly optional. A gesture of thanks, not an obligation. Why does the US still rely on tipping? There are 4 main reasons why America has held tightly to its tipping system. 1. Corporate benefit. Many employers in the US prefer tipping because it allows them to pay sub-minimum wages, as low as $2.13 per hour federally, shift labor costs to customers, avoid providing full benefits or consistent raises. Tipping saves restaurants and gig platforms billions per year. In fact, some lobbying groups like the National Restaurant Association (NRA) have fought to keep sub-minimum wages legal. 2. Cultural individualism. Tipping aligns with the American idea of individual responsibility and merit. Customers believe they're rewarding good service, punishing bad service, in control of the outcome. It's the American way. You hustle hard, you earn what you're worth. Comment on Fox News article, July 2025. 3. Resistance to price transparency. Many businesses use tipping to keep base prices lower and avoid sticker shock. A $12 burger feels cheaper than a $15 burger with service charge built in. Customers believe they have more choice, even if they feel pressured. Ironically, this leads to hidden inflation. People often end up paying more, but with more emotional pressure. 4. Lack of political will. Attempts to eliminate tipping or raise the tipped minimum wage often face lobbying pressure, public misunderstanding, fears of job loss or price hikes. Even when cities like Washington, D.C. pass laws to end sub-minimum wages for tipped workers, opposition from restaurant owners and some servers led to delays and rollbacks. The myth of Better service. Many Americans claim that tipping motivates better service, but studies show no consistent correlation between tip size and service quality. In reality, tips depend more on the server's race, gender, and appearance than the quality of service. Cornell Hospitality Report 2020. In short, while most developed countries see tipping as optional or even awkward, the U.S. has institutionalized it into law, culture, and business models. Breaking away would require not just economic shifts, but a cultural revolution. The future of tipping in America. Reform or entrenchment? As digital payment systems evolve and public frustration grows, America stands at a crossroads. Will the tipping culture change, or will it become even more entrenched? A divided nation, reform versus resistance. Across the U.S., there are two camps in the debate on tipping reform. Camp 1, end the tipping system. Advocates for ending tipping argue that the system is outdated, unfair, emotionally exploitative, a loophole for corporate wage evasion. They propose replacing tipping with mandatory service charges, raising the federal minimum wage, including for tip workers, enforcing stronger anti-discrimination and anti-harassment protections. Some progressive cities and restaurants have already tested this model. We pay our staff $18 an hour plus full benefits. No tips needed. Customers love the transparency. Owner of Tip-Free Cafe in Portland. However, even in liberal cities like New York or San Francisco, many restaurants reverted back to tipping after losing business due to higher upfront prices. Camp 2, keep it, just fix it. This group believes tipping should stay, but be reformed. Raise the tipped minimum wage, cap tipping prompts and apps, create tip pooling laws to balance income among workers, limit suggested tip amounts to avoid coercion. President Trump's 2025 tip tax break law fits into this model. It doesn't remove tipping, but lightens the tax burden on workers. Let the market work. Just don't punish workers with taxes on their hard-earned tips. Supporter at Trump rally, July 5, 2025. Technological disruption. Apps like Uber, DoorDash, and Toast have completely changed how Americans tip. Tips now happen before the service is even delivered. Default settings nudge users toward 25% or higher. Workers are sometimes rated based on how much they're tipped, not just performance. As AI and automation expand, some worry tipping will become meaningless, even as the pressure remains. I just tipped a robot that made my coffee. No one asked me if I was okay with that. Reddit user, June 2025. Generation Z and the shift in attitude. Younger generations, especially Gen Z, are pushing back. They prefer fair wages over tipping. They're more outspoken on social media about tip creep. Many actively avoid businesses that guilt them into tipping. A 2025 TikTok trend called #TipRebellion encourages users to politely skip tipping at counter service spots, advocate for wage transparency, record and share their experiences when feeling tip-shamed. We're not anti-worker. We're anti-corporate greed. Pay people right. At Tip Truths, 400K followers on TikTok. So what's next for tipping in America? The future of tipping in the U.S. is still uncertain, but experts and observers have proposed a few possible directions. 1. Gradual reform. We could see a slow shift where minimum wages increase. Tipping would still be around, but it wouldn't be as necessary or expected as it is today. 2. Full phase-out. In some industries, tipping might disappear altogether, replaced by fixed service charges that are built into the price. 3. Digital dominance. Tipping might become completely digital. Apps and smart systems, possibly powered by AI, could automate tipping decisions or recommend amounts based on algorithms. 4. Two-tier society. There's also a chance we'll see a divided system. Upscale restaurants and services might move to a no-tip model, while lower-wage workers in other sectors would still rely heavily on tips to make ends meet. Final thoughts. Tipping in America is more than a transaction. It's a reflection of national values. Freedom versus fairness, individualism versus solidarity, gratitude versus obligation. As the country debates its economic and moral compass, one thing is clear. Tipping was meant to reward generosity. Now it measures how broken the system really is. What do you think? Should the U.S. move beyond tipping? Or is it a tradition worth preserving? Let's talk about it. Thanks for watching this deep dive into the tipping culture in America. If you've ever felt confused, pressured, grateful, or even frustrated when tipping, you're not alone. Now we want to hear from you. Do you think tipping should stay or go? Have you ever worked in a job that relied on tips? What was your best or worst tipping experience? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's have a respectful and honest conversation. If you found this video informative, don't forget to like the video, subscribe for more social deep dives, share this with a friend who always tips too much or never tips at all. Follow us for more stories that unpack how money, culture, and people collide in everyday life. Thanks again, and remember, behind every tip is a person. Behind every system is a choice.